Today I'm going to be speaking to you about 5 reasons why I think you should be shooting film in 2019, or at least give it a try. What is up, guys? I'm Rowan. I'm a photographer. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Cool, formalities out the way. Let's get into today's video, which are my 5 reasons why I think you should be shooting film in 2019, or at least give it a try. I'm going to try and give you 5 or 6 reasons. Let's get into it. Reason number 1 to get into shooting film or to give film a try is my personal favorite reason, which is the cameras. Film cameras are just plain and simply awesome. I think they are some of the most beautiful pieces of tools to work with in the photography field. They are very well built, they are quirky, they are charming, they're just absolutely beautiful things, and if you start owning and collecting them, you will appreciate how well they're made, you'll appreciate how nice they look, you'll appreciate how just beautifully designed they are. And the cameras alone, I think, should be a reason to get into film. Plus, film cameras are cheap or affordable because a majority of them are used. I know there are very expensive film cameras out there, but I'm just talking about something to get you into the whole genre of shooting film. Film cameras are quite affordable if you know where to look, and most likely you can also find that most of your relatives have an old film camera stashed away in the cupboard, or your grandmother or your auntie, whatever, has got an old camera that they used to use which they're not using anymore. Maybe you ask their family, or you ask somebody in your family if they have an old camera. Most likely they do, which they will probably be willing to part and give it to you if you're into photography. Plain example, I have a couple of film cameras. One used to be my dad's old film camera, an AE1. I have a film camera that was handed to me down by my late grandfather, which is a very nice Yashica Minister camera. So these cameras, if you know where to look, they can be found for very, very, very good prices, or you can get them for free if you have a family member that perhaps has one. Another good sort of tip that I normally find that you can find very good film cameras is at thrift stores or at flea markets, because a lot of people get rid of stuff at flea markets, or they try and sell away their old things, and you can have these film cameras for very, very, very good prices. And the nice thing about that is, if you buy a film camera for very cheap, it is most of the time, if you do not like the camera, or you feel the camera is not for you, or you feel the camera or the whole film genre is not for you, you can easily sell that camera for most likely a profit or get your money back. So I think the cameras being so affordable is a good enough reason to give the genre a try. When it comes to shooting with these old film cameras, another reason I think you should give it a shot is that it'll make you a technically better photographer. By that I mean it'll make you understand and master the technical bits of photography. So like understanding shutter speed better, understanding aperture better, and even focusing better, because majority of these old film cameras do not have like autofocus. Some of them have a battery powered light meter, which is not like your live view on your camera. So it makes you think more, it makes you understand the technical aspects of photography a bit more, which is something I think if you shoot film and if you shoot with these film cameras, is something which you can take on to your digital workflow and understand more about that, because it's just the manual aspect of it, especially things like manual focus. Most of these cameras most of these old 35mm SLR film cameras do not have autofocus, so you're forced to manual focus. And manual focus, I think, is a technique that, even though we do have very good autofocus systems in modern day cameras, manual focus is a nice technique nice skill to have in your arsenal, because there will be situations when you are shooting and there is just not enough light for autofocus to work properly, or you just need that, especially if you're shooting video. Mastering manual focus is something very nice to have in your arsenal. And I think using these film cameras, or using these cameras that do not have all these autofocus abilities, is a nice way for you to just polish up some skills or add skills to your arsenal of things you can bring to the table as a photographer. And finally, if you buy a film camera, as previously mentioned, and you decide that shooting film is not for you, it's not the end of the road, because you can always sell the camera and probably get your money back, or make a very decent profit out of it. Example, I bought a Nikon FM2 camera a while ago at a flea market for dead cheap, and the camera was a little bit faulty. shutter wasn't working properly. It would cost me quite a bit to get it fixed, which I wasn't willing to pay, but I put the camera up on Gumtree for sale, and somebody was very much interested in it. I made more than double what I had paid for it, which is, fantastic. So just testament to the thing that you can actually get rid of the camera if you feel it's not good for you, if you feel it's not for you, the whole shooting film thing, you can get rid of the camera and continue with being a digital shooter all the time. But and ideally, even if you don't want to get rid of the camera, you can use the camera as a paperweight. It makes a very nice decorative piece for your desk. You can put it on a shelf with all your decorations. Film cameras always look awesome used as decorations. You can use the camera as a prop if you shoot things like models and all that. You can use the camera as a nice prop to add to your shoots, whatever. It's just, I feel, a win-win situation. Reason number 2 to shoot film for me is the aesthetic or the look of film. Film has what I would precisely put in good words, a very balanced look. When you look at a very well taken or executed photo shot on film, it always just looks so good. The grain that film produces, the tones, the colors, the exposure, the way film brings out different highlights or different features from aspects of a scene. When you've executed a very well photo on film, I always feel that it just looks so good. It just looks so balanced. It looks so nice. And for that alone is a good enough reason to just get into shooting film. And proof to this aesthetic that I feel the look of film is just a good enough reason to get into film alone. There are so many tutorials on YouTube. There are so many presets out there. There are so many articles on the internet on how to achieve the film look, on how to make a preset to make your photos look like film, on how to emulate your digital files to look like film. And for me, those are fantastic. Those are brilliant. I have presets of my own that I have built over time in my Lightroom that I apply to my digital photos because I like that film aesthetic. But I feel the best way to get the film look is to shoot film. It's a no-brainer. If you want the film look, the best way to get the film look is to shoot film. My third reason for getting into shooting film is the workflow. What I mean by the workflow is, this may be a personal preference, but every time I shoot digital work, be it for myself, be it for a client, be it for whatever reason it is, I come back home and I've got tons of memory cards or tons of photos on a memory card that I have to dump into Lightroom and start working on. And as much as I know that editing your photos and putting your signature look onto your photos is definitely part of the art form or part of the work, but if it was ever possible for me to find a way to eliminate sitting in front of the computer for long hours of time editing photos, I would definitely do that. Because when it comes to photography, as much as I say editing and digitally manipulating all our photos is part of the art form, I honestly prefer to be out there shooting and creating photos, seeing all the cool places, meeting all the people that I get to photograph with. I would honestly prefer to spend less time in front of the computer and more time shooting, doing the actual shooting. And shooting film, I always find gives me that option, because every time I shoot film, I'll go out and do a shoot or come back with a roll of film, and that film goes to the lab, it gets processed, it gets scanned, and when the photos come back, I am 90% of the time happy with the way they look, as in the colors are on point, the exposures seem to be always good. I don't find the urge or the need to heavily put edits onto it. Maybe the slight edits that I'll do is balance out the horizon and cropping out or fixing my crop, or getting it ready for Instagram or Facebook posting, whatever. I never feel I have to spend numerous hours on a set of photos that I've shot on film, because I pleasantly am happy with the way the result looks straight from the lab, the way the photos come out like that. So I honestly feel that helps, with the workflow. All right, so reason number 4 for shooting film for me is what I call the process, or the experience of actually shooting film using old cameras. Shooting film is a completely alien and at times nervy experience if you've never done it before, especially when you are using these very old cameras, which is basically old tech, because most of the time these cameras don't have, all of the time these cameras don't have instant feedback. You don't know what your photos exactly look like you would on the back of a digital screen. So this requires you to think a lot about your photos. So this requires you to think about your composition, to think about your exposure if you're exposed well, to constantly scan your scene, to constantly watch what the light in the scenario you're shooting in is doing, to constantly, it keeps you on edge on how all these elements are constantly working to affect your photo. And I find you are always taking more time to think about all these aspects, and you're working harder to create something which you think is going to be a very good photo, and that alone is adding to your skills as a photographer. And it is making you think more and creatively work harder, which can never be a bad thing for everybody, for anybody. We all need to creatively work harder all the time to create things that we are proud of, or create art that we think is very good. So I always say that the process and experience of shooting film is something somewhat everybody should at least go through, because it is completely different compared to shooting digital, where you can actually see all your photos the instant you shoot them. With film, you always have to wait and find out how the photos have come out. Have you nailed your focus? Have you nailed your exposure? Is your composition what you thought it would be? And over time you get to understand these things more. You get to work harder on these things. The more you do it, the more it becomes second nature, and you become good at these things. And you find yourself, if you shoot a lot of film, you find yourself transferring all those things that you've learned from that experience into your film workflow, into your digital workflow. And that is, as I say, always nice. Everybody wants to improve whatever it is they're doing, and I feel that is worthy alone of getting into film. The process, the experience, the things that film teaches you when you are facing all these challenging elements, of shooting film. So yeah, and the best part about that process and experience is, once you've shot all of these films and you send your rolls of film away, you obviously do not know what the photos look like exactly. You have some sort of slight idea, never really think. And whenever you get the photos back from the lab, and they've been scanned, they've been processed, they've been scanned into digital files now, and you bring them onto the computer and you look, or you see them for the very first time, I am always blown away, because they always seem to come out in a way that I was not really expecting them to. I've always got a wow factor to them. Every time I get a set of photos back from the lab and they get scanned and they come back, I always find that they are just absolutely, I'm always blown away by how well I've done, or how well they've come out and stuff like that. And yes, there is the odd occasion where they're complete duds. A lot of them are out of focus or whatever, but that is a learning experience, and everybody, I feel, could use that. So if you figure out where you've gone wrong, and the next time you have that in the back of your head, this is the kind of mistakes to avoid. This is what happened the last time, or this is what happened this time. So I always feel that it is good to go through that experience of shooting film. That whole process will make you a better photographer, content creator in general. Reason number 5 for shooting film is the people you come across shooting film. When you start shooting film, or when you get into shooting film, you obviously get involved in all these different circles, either be it online or be it locally amongst the people that you know, or be it you meet these people. And I always say film community is just full of very cool people with very cool fat cameras, and most of these cool people with cool cameras have very cool stories to tell about those cameras, or where did they get the camera, what camera it is. The film community just always seems to have this little bond based around the whole process, the whole shooting thing. And I've always said that when it comes to photography, there's a very nice slogan that I picked up a couple of years ago working on a voluntary health portrait project. And the slogan was, love photography, but love people more. And I've always been like that. I like photography. I love photography. It's what I do for a living. And photography has led me to meet some very awesome people. And I really think there's nothing more better than to meet very good people out there. But also, like, when it comes to people, film cameras I've always found to be very good conversation starters. I always liken it to driving an old Volkswagen bus or an old Volkswagen Beetle. You know, everywhere you stop or everywhere you go, there seems to be always somebody that will stop you and compliment you on the car, or compliment you on the way the car looks, or tell you a story that they used to own one, or tell you a story of how their family used to own one. And I feel it's very much a similar thing with film cameras. You know, somebody sees you walking down the street with a film camera around you, strapped around you, and they always seem to, hey dude, cool camera, I used to have one of those, or my dad used to have one of those, or I used to have one of those when I was much younger, we had one of those. And it's always a nice conversation starter. And finally, on a lighter note, if you shoot film, you can now anoint all your photographs with all these trendy hashtag 35mm, hashtag film is not dead, hashtag buy film not megapixel. You can be one of the cool kids now. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up, drop a comment down below, subscribe to my channel. It's fairly new and I'm looking at creating more videos in 2019 around photography, video, things that I think would be beneficial to you guys out there wanting to get into photography, wanting to talk about photography and all of those things. So yeah, see you in the next one.